Tonight, our special topic will be Fiancé Visas. I don't know how to put the accent over the E right there on the banner, but there is supposed to be an accent there. So for Fiancé Visas, this is where a U.S. citizen is married to a person, or excuse me, is engaged to a person in a foreign country, in somewhere besides the United States. It's a different scenario if the person is here in the United States. We normally do not choose the fiancé visa route for people who are engaged and both of them are physically present here. This is for people that are outside the U.S. where the U.S. citizen is separated from their fiancé. We're going to talk about how do you get this couple back together. We celebrated Valentine's Day on Sunday, and I thought, why not? We'll talk about love a little bit more this week. And this is one of those visas that I think has the most emotional impact for my clients because it's young love. They're engaged. They're waiting to start their life together. And my firm and I help make that happen. We have done a lot of these visas. So for a fiancé visa, it is a 3-step process. That means you have to go through 3 different parts of the case before your fiance will get the green card. And I'm going to tell you what those steps are now so that you can have an understanding of how this visa works. I also want you to know that the overall time frame for a fiancé visa is about, I would give it 1 to 2 years. Is that shocking? 1 to 2 years, yes. But one thing that's important to know about the fiancé visa is that you don't have to be apart for 1 to 2 years. You and your fiancé will probably be together between 6 months and 12 months after we start this petition, if the coronavirus will go away. So let's talk about these steps, and we'll talk about the impact that the pandemic and COVID-19 is having on these cases. So number 1, the first thing we have to do for these cases is we have to file a form with immigration. That's the common thing that we do with almost every case that we file with immigration. You have to file a form. This form's name is the I-129F. It stands for fiancé. And not only do you send in the form, you also have to send in proof. You have to prove that you're in a real, valid, loving relationship. This is not just a relationship so that someone can get a green card. You have to prove, in my office, we take cases where the couple has met physically in the past 2 years. Got to prove that. So I want to see photographs. I want to see plane tickets. I want to see evidence that the couple has met in person. And lastly, we also have to prove that both people in this relationship are able to get married. If you're married to someone else, you cannot start this process yet. You have to be divorced, or we supply an annulment certificate, or we supply a death certificate in some cases. So you have to show that you're not married to anyone else. Immigration will take our packet, they will take a look at it, and normally the processing time, I would give it between 4 and 7 months. At the USCIS, we have to wait for them to make a decision. Now today, I got a notice that tells me that my case is moving on to step number 2. We have several K-1 fiancé cases that are going on in my office, and once step 1 is approved, we get the notice. Step number 2 is happening. This notice came today. It said the National Visa Center has received this approved I-129F from the USCIS. Now we are going to forward the case over to Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, to the U.S. Consulate there in Addis Ababa. So now I know we have officially moved on to step number 2 of that particular fiancé case. They were very happy to get the news they were moving on to step 2. In this step, more things have to be done. Number 1, the person needs to attend a medical and have a medical done. She needs to submit a particular form. She needs to gather up her documents. And also, before the big day, before the interview happens, she is going to practice with me. because I don't want her going to the embassy without having an understanding of the types of questions they will ask. I want her to practice answering those questions. And the officer at the embassy, they look at the form that we submit. They look at the documents that they have in their hands. And so she needs to be familiar with all those things that the consular officer is looking at. So I don't like anyone to go to their interview blind. That means they don't know what's going to happen. I want them to go in there and feel comfortable that they know what will happen on their big day. Okay, so that is the big day. They have their interview. They will get a stamp in their passport. It's called the K1. The K1 stamp. There it says on my banner, K1 interview. Once you get that K1 stamp, then you will notice it has an expiration date. The expiration date is usually 4 months from the time that it was issued, this visa. And you need to come to the U.S. in that window. You cannot let this visa expire. It is critically important that you come in that window. If we have travel problems due to COVID, we will deal with those, but I truly hope not. So finally, when you get that visa stamp, you know that you are rolling right along in your case and you're going over to step number 3. This is a step where we have to do several things. And this is the step when the foreign national, let's talk about my client from Ethiopia, when she will get to apply for her green card. So after she receives the stamp, she must come to the U.S. within the visa validity of that stamp. She needs to, second, get married within 90 days of entry to the U.S. And then soon after marriage, we need to file the green card application. Those are important steps that happen pretty quickly after the fiancé arrives in the United States. So when my young lady from Ethiopia finally comes in on her K1 visa, I am going to push them. Not because I'm mean, but because we have deadlines to meet. And as their lawyer, I need to make sure that they are meeting all the deadlines in order to avoid any problems on their case. Let's talk about timing. So remember I said about 6 to 12 months before the fiancé can come in, 1 to 2 year total time. So between 6 and 12 months is when I normally anticipate the foreign national being able to come to the U.S. and be here, 6 to 12 month window. When we get to step number 3 and we file that green card application, the processing time is pretty slow right now. It is close to a year. I am now having cases that are finishing that I filed early last year, 2020. And they're just now getting done in 2021. So that's where I'm coming up with this 1 to 2 year total processing time to get the green card in my client's hands. In addition, I'm noticing that immigration is calling more and more couples to interviews at the local office. A few years ago, we didn't have so many K1 interviews based on their green card application. They came in as a K1, they filed the green card application, we sent in tons of documents, tons of proof, and the green card was just mailed to them. So an interview is not always required, but these days I'm noticing more and more that they are calling K1 couples for the interview. So after you get married, you receive the green card, you need to keep documenting your relationship. If you have a nice honeymoon, if you go out to eat every Friday night with your friends and family, which is hard to do during the pandemic. If you rent a house or buy a house together and have other financial documents, those will help if the interview comes and you have to go to the local field office for an interview. So those are the 3 steps for the fiancé visa case. Number 1, we've got to file the petition with immigration. Number 2, after that's approved, we're dealing with the consulate abroad in the foreign national's home country. And number 3, we have a few steps to do, but all of that takes place in the United States. You've got to enter within the K1 visa validity period. You've got to get married within 90 days. And then we need to file the green card application soon after that. So our work is to take our clients from the beginning to the end. And when you come to me and you say, Audra, I'm engaged to someone and they live in Australia, I'll say, okay, we can do this. It gets a little tricky in two places. There's two things that can make your case a little harder. Number one, the number one time is when you have a wedding date set, where you say, Audra, I want to file the fiance visa and we want to get married on March 12th, 2022. Well, as you see from all of the things I just described, a lot of those things depend on, can we get that fiance here to the US by March 12th, 2022? So setting a firm date for a wedding can make your case more complicated. It's easier from an immigration standpoint to be flexible on the wedding date. The second thing that will complicate your case until things get better is we're still dealing with COVID-19. I'm so sorry to tell you, you know this. But what's happening with immigration and COVID-19 is that the consulates are struggling. Number one, they are behind schedule. Those consulates are barely open, and they have about 11 months of visa applications that they have not completed. Because I have visa applications for March 2020, still haven't been rescheduled, and we are in February 2021. So those embassies are behind schedule. They're not fully open, and I think that this is going to be a compounding problem. And if the embassies do not open soon, we're going to see longer and longer wait times for these interviews.